Hi guys, today I would like to share my initial impressions of the Ricoh GR3. I rented this camera for about a week and I've been shooting on it for a few days. Uh, I would also like to share about some things I like and don't like about the camera. So the GR is a very compact camera. There's nothing quite like it in the market as a direct comparison. Let's start with the top. There is a hot shoe mount with a cover included. On off switch, shutter button, the front dial, and the mode dial. So we have manual, shutter priority, aperture priority, program mode, and 3 user modes. And to the back, we have a LCD screen. Let me switch it on so I can show you. So the first lever here is actually our exposure compensation. So you can see I can adjust the EV, and if I press it down, this is the settings that you can change by default, but you can change the shortcuts in the menu. So on the first tab here, we have our film simulations. They call it image control. So okay, usually I'm using this positive film. And next we have our focus types: auto, area, AF, same AF but has priority in the center. Select AF, which is what I'm using normally. Pinpoint AF, quite similar, but it's a much smaller square. Next we have tracking AF, which I must say it's actually quite good for this camera. So if I focus, I can move around and it tracks the subject. Next we have AFC, continuous autofocus, manual focus, and snap focus, as well as you can set it to infinity. So let's go back to select AF. Next we have metering, multi-segment, center weighted, spot, and highlight weighted. I usually just use center weighted. And file format, you got JPEG, RAW, and RAW plus JPEG. So for my intended purpose of using this camera, I mostly shoot in JPEG. Finally, we have our LCD brightness. So currently I set it to the brightest. This button is playback, so you can see all the settings here. If you press the display button, you can see more of your in-depth settings, histogram, remove all icons, back to normal. Here we have your function button, we can assign it to many functions. It's up to you. For me, I have it for the crop modes. So actually, yeah, this lens is a 28mm equivalent lens, but you can have a 35mm crop and a 50mm crop. I have seen some other users, they have assigned this button for back button focusing, or maybe to change the snap focus distance, but I think I use the crop mode often, so it's handy for me. And here we have the scroll wheel, and we have a macro mode, so you actually have to enter a macro mode to take close-up pictures. So let's try again. I'm about maybe 10 cm away from the subject and it's not focusing, but if I go into macro mode, it crops in a little. And you can see that it can be quite sharp. Now, one thing I have to mention here is the quality of the LCD panel is not that great, because initially when I was taking photos and playing back through the camera, I was quite unimpressed with the image quality in terms of the colors and the sharpness. But actually when I put the card into my laptop and viewed it from either the laptop or my phone, that's when you really can see what this camera can do. And I will include some sample images later. Next we have the ISO button. So actually now we are in auto ISO. So if I go and turn the scroll wheel, it will take me out of auto ISO. Now we are in manual ISO. If you press the function button again, see, now we are at 1000 ISO. Now we're back to auto ISO, but if I press function again, back to manual. But you don't have to do that. If you're going from auto to manual ISO, just you can change it straight away. So we'll go back to auto ISO. And for the button below is for white balance. So there are quite a bit of choices here: auto, multi-auto, daylight, and for various scenes. And you can have a custom one. If you can see function button here, you can still change it. So I'm gonna set it at auto. And finally here we have the drive mode as well as the timer. So just pressing it once brings you into the drive mode, and you can go down to select the self timer, and pressing right here will allow us to choose our drive mode. Got single, continuous shooting, exposure bracketing, multi-exposure, interval shooting, and interval composite. And you can set the respective functions by pressing the FN button again. But this is just an initial impression, so I'm not going to go into that. For the back side, that's about it. The touch panel is touch sensitive. You can swipe, pinch, unpinch to zoom, or you can set touch to shoot. So for mine is set to touch to focus and then shoot, but you can have it just to focus, or you can have it just to change the position of the AF point. So going to the bottom, you got a thread here, tripod mount, and battery door. So here you have your battery and the SD card. Let's go to the front. So nothing much goes on here. I think these two are mics, and this is a AF assist lamp, and yeah, the front now is here. And you have this removable lens ring thing. You can see there are connection points here. You can use other accessories. They have, I believe, white and tele converters. On the left side, you have a movie button, but based on my impressions, the video quality of this camera is not very good. So I have not assigned it to anything else, but I believe that you can. If you press and hold this button, it takes you into the Wi-Fi mode. I mean, you can toggle the Wi-Fi on and off to connect to your smartphone, to transfer your images or control via the Ricoh image app. And on the right side, you have a door here, actually for the USB-C port. So this can be used for charging, data transfer, HDMI output. It's pretty much just one port for everything. So that's about it for the exterior initial impressions. You can put a hand strap here if you want to use a full strap. There's another mounting point here. It goes this way. So the other camera that I'm using to take photographs, as well as the one that is recording this video now, is a Fuji XS10. So that's what I'll be making most of the comparisons to. So actually what I like about this camera the most is, of course, the size. It is much smaller than most other mirrorless cameras. It has a relatively big sensor for this body size, APS-C sensor, and the lens is quite good, f2.8. Sharpness wise, if I am comparing to something from, my dad has a X100V, and to compare the image quality, I would say in most controlled situations, the GR actually fares better, because I think firstly because it has IBIS compared to X100V, and I do find the images to be sharper when you punch in. But of course, there are many other aspects of image quality, and like I said, it is in a controlled situation where you have good light and everything. I think I'll do a more in-depth comparison video on that. But yeah, just my initial impressions. Turning the camera on is fast. You know, you can just turn it on and shoot. Turn it off turn it on and shoot. I believe this is one of the faster ones out there. It might not be much difference, but well, it is fast, and that's appreciated. Uh, yeah, the lens, I would say, it really impressed me a lot, because you wouldn't think a fixed lens, let alone a retractable one, would be able to provide such a quality. You'll be able to see some sample images that I will edit in at the end. Other things that I like, I do find it quite intuitive. A small body comes with its own trade-offs. Buttons are smaller, they are more crowded. So, but the engineers, I believe they have done a good job. Nothing much to mention about the top. You have a very small front dial. It's usable. Shutter button, at least, is more substantial. It feels good. The mode dial, you actually have to, there's a lock. You have to press it down and change the mode. So I guess it's possible with one hand, but I find that it's not so easy. So press it down and change the modes. Would I have preferred for the lock not to be there and for the dial to be a stiffer one, so that it doesn't change so easily? Yeah, I think I would prefer that, because that's what I'm used to. It's very intuitive, the controls. So this button is not only the exposure compensation, but it's also the quick menu. And for now, these settings work for me. I will consider changing them. Yeah, maybe the view setting and file format, I don't think I will change those often. Not even the film simulations. Yeah, because this camera for me is one that, it's snap shooting. I just take it anywhere with me every day and take pictures of whatever. The best camera you can have with you is the one that's with you. Macro mode is quite impressive. I'm not sure if I can show. Just viewing from the playback, it is sharp, and not many lenses can focus so closely. The manuals, I find them to be okay, quite easy. So in this folder, still image settings, you have your usual stuff: focus, face ID tag. Most of the photo functions are here. And then you got video. Not gonna go too much into that. And playback settings, nothing much, nothing interesting here. You can develop your raw photos within the camera, and you can do things like cropping, resize, file transfer, protect. But I wouldn't recommend doing that on this LCD screen because I don't think the quality is very good, not very color accurate. And yeah, these are the custom settings for the buttons. These are for display and user modes. So you have user modes. Currently, I'm not using the user modes because the PASM modes, the 4 modes here, they serve me quite well. The other modes that I would use are snap focus. I would go into the menu and activate that when I want to use it. And other functions such as film simulation focus, I can do it in the quick menu. But I only had this camera for a few days and probably taken 300 or 400 images. So if I do decide, because I have to return this camera soon, if I do decide to get this camera, then a new one, then we should explore into the user modes. There are it turned off by itself. There are film simulation recipes, same as the Fuji ones you can find online, and you can make your own film simulations. I think to wrap it up, based on the things that I dislike, would be, some of the controls. At the end of the day, although it's good for one-handed operations, they are not that comfortable. I often find myself pressing the wrong button. And the other point was the quality of the screen is not that great. So I'm not sure if you could see there, but the initial preview of that image had very weird artifacts in it. So if it will focus. Can you see that? Maybe I'll zoom in. For a split second, you can see some weird color shifting. You see that? Focus on the dial. You can see that the camera's doing some weird adjustment, and this is not something that I have seen in other cameras. So I do find that it's uncomfortable at times. Like it doesn't instill confidence that you have taken a good picture. Yeah. Battery life is okay. I'm not sure how old these batteries are, but I'm confident that I can get a good half a day out of it. Just maybe take note of maybe the LCD brightness. You don't need it at the brighter setting all the time. And to wrap up, the things that I like, obviously, will be the size, the quality of the lens. It's pocketable, produces good images. The controls are quite intuitive, although not the most comfortable setup. I feel for my intended purpose of this camera, which is snap shooting, everyday documentation, shooting at 28 mm, little bit of landscape, architecture, you know, cropping in once in a while. It's the right tool for the job. Briefly thinking about some of, the competition for this camera, there is really nothing quite like it because it depends what you're comparing. Sensor size, the size of the camera. There isn't a camera out there that, has a APS-C sensor at this size. Cameras of this size, yeah, you do have quite a few from Canon, Sony, and so on. It is a street photography camera, so people, I think, most often compare this to the X100V, which my dad has and I have used it. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the X100V because there are quite a few shortcomings. I think the most outstanding features of the X100V to me is the optical viewfinder. It's quite a pleasure to use. And also the leaf shutter, which this camera Ricoh GRiii also has, but it doesn't have a built-in flash. So been watching some videos online, and actually because of the leaf shutter, the sync speed of the flash is much faster, so it's very possible to use the built-in flash in the daytime. So I think that's one of the standout features of the camera. Other than that, manual controls and all, sleek design. I don't find anything else that special compared to my Fuji XS10 or to a X-T4. I think people primarily buy that camera for the vintage look and feel, manual controls, optical viewfinder. Like in terms of producing nice images, most Fujifilm cameras, they do very similar job. That's just my first initial impressions. Let me know if you guys would like another video comparing this camera to my Fuji XS10 or the X100V. I will be adding the sample images at the back of this video so you can take a look. You can see what I mean by the image quality is really quite good. I like the colors. I primarily shoot on the positive film simulation. Thanks for watching.